I prefer to take the approach of asking a lot of questions of people. I did this with somebody who was brand new, talking to them, and I don't remember what the issue was. They were kind of complaining about something, and they had the right answer for why something was going on, but they got there the wrong way, and they were learning the wrong lesson about being right. And so I just asked some questions, really open-ended questions, got them to talk, and then I could summarize at the end. You know, it sounds like this is what's really going on. Yeah, that's what it is. And I would prefer, both in business and talking to somebody in the fellowship, to ask some questions and get them to self-discover. I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. Recovery isn't the fellowship. It isn't the people around us. It isn't meetings. It's the steps. If we want to say officially what AA is in 12 steps. But man, that fellowship is important. We just got done, Steve, with our Joe and Charlie, and I would say that fellowship that we had was one of the most important pieces. And I think the thing we got most out of it, after we all agreed nobody wanted to do this in the first place.
Yeah, that fellowship to me is it's a linchpin of my recovery. I've talked about and we both talked about our feelings about higher powers and gods and all that stuff. So for me, the fellowship has taken on more of an importance. And like you said, I don't know. I talk to anybody who I certainly work with and try to help. I talk about finding that fellowship that belongs to you, right? And that's what this Joe and Charlie was to me, is that, those are some of the guys, not all of us, those are some of the guys who are part of my group. I'm going to move this screen. So that, I have this group of people, right? And like I said, that group that we did it with, for the most part, we're these guys. And it just, and we finished it up. We always do like a meal. We finished up, Wednesday night was great.
It was.
It was really and sometimes I don't even like doing that food part of it, but Wednesday night was really, really good. And I felt so, it felt so good to be there with the guys and just hang out. So yeah, fellowship for me has become a huge part of my recovery. It is not recovery. It's a piece of it, right? It's a three-legged stool, if you will, whatever you want to call it. It's important to me. But it is the steps, and it is working through those steps. But it's also having that fellowship so that you can get some feedback on how you're doing with those steps, right? That's the other thing, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the whole point with the fellowship is it's not just your sponsor giving you feedback. It's other people who maybe, see you regularly in meetings and stuff that could give you some feedback on maybe how you're doing.
I think the fellowship as well is, you're saying feedback, and it's asking questions, and it's talking to people, and it's all based on this is what's going on in my life, and then that ends up being step-based. You can start a program with the fellowship. Mm-hmm. You can have it be something that helps you get to meetings. I struggle with that being it on its own. I think there needs to be that meet in step work or something else that you're doing that are tangible actions, but that fellowship is something that can push you along.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And, again, here's the thing for me with fellowship, and I consider somewhat going to meetings fellowship, right? Meetings are part of fellowship more than steps, but not completely. I look at steps. My own opinion is I look at steps as that work you do on your own or with another alcoholic, right. Maybe in small groups, if you will. But certainly one-on-one or by yourself as you go through some of these steps, right? That's what I look at, the work that I need to do in order to stay sober, in order to live the kind of life I want to live. I need to work those things in my daily life. So going to meetings is a little bit of fellowship to me. It's a little bit staying in touch with the first 164 pages of the book, and it's a lot about sharing. Right? I go to a Friday night meeting, men's meeting. I talk about it all the time. It's a topic discussion, which means we bring up a topic and we talk about it. Right? There's no book. There's nothing. We relate it to our recovery. Sometimes we talk about the big books and the steps. Sometimes we just talk about life, depending on So that's a fellowship thing to me, right? I go to that meeting. There's the guys that are there, and we talk about it. So, and it's a huge part, right? It's a huge, so going to meetings is that fellowship. But and then we talk about it all the time on this podcast where other people maybe don't. We talk about that fellowship that's out there in social media today, right? Yeah. That people who aren't doing a 12-step program, although they might be doing some of the 12-step work without doing all of it, or without doing it the rigorous way that we do it, right? Following them closely, they're probably doing some of that work anyway, but a lot of their program is based on fellowship. But for me, for this alcoholic, and for a lot of the people that I know, right, and this is the difference, it's like AA is what we do. AA is what works for us. If you need my help in getting sober, it's got to be AA because it's the only thing I know. And it's going to be fellowship. I always say, guys who come in and ask me for help, I'm like, you need to find your group. You need to find your tribe, your pack, whatever you want to call it. You need to have that fellowship so you have people to call on when you're hurting. And so to me, it's that important.
You're touching on something else that's really important, which is having that pack. I hear the analogy that stay close within the pack because the apex predators will pick off those on the outside. Right. Your fellowship is your way of staying within the pack, and within the pack equals safety.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I looked at it. If I'm staying close to the people whose recovery I like, or maybe somebody new who I can help draw into the pack, it is a way of staying sober.
Yeah. No question about it. And, the thing I like about the fellowship is that, and again, mostly this happens to me, mostly during meetings, but it can happen outside of meetings if you extend this fellowship outside of meetings, is I find people who think like I do, right? Who have the same struggles is what I mean. I like talking to people who don't think like I do too, so I get some different ideas. But what I find are the people like, ooh, wow, that sounds like what's happening in my head, right? Yes. That person is talking about something that is very personal to me, and that happens in my head. So I can talk to that person and have some more discussion about that, right? So, hey, what's going on? And then I always talk about it. Like I went to my Friday night meeting, and I heard guys who had the same things happening in their head as was happening in my head.
Right.
And they had decades of sobriety. And what that gave me was hope, right? What that gave me was hope that, all right, these guys have figured out how not to drink, even though they have what we call alcoholic thinking, right? And I talk about it all the time. For me, alcoholic thinking is a part of my daily life, which doesn't mean I'm always thinking about alcohol. It means I just, my brain seems to be wired differently than many other people. And I accept that today. And I use the fellowship and the steps in order to manage that. Just like, we talk about it being an illness, right? For me, and we talk about it being a disease of the mind more than a disease, not only a disease of the body, but of the mind also. And that's how I manage my disease, is by doing the fellowship and talking to other alcoholics and doing all of that work.
It is something to say of getting into mindset, because even when it's not necessarily alcohol, it could be job stress, friends, relationship. Our minds all kind of work the same. When I say it works the same, it works in a flawed way. There's a commonality between all of us that made us drink, and it was our mindset. So I can go to somebody in the fellowship and not just say, I'm having trouble staying sober. I can say, my wife's really getting underneath my skin.
Right.
And what do I do about it?
Right.
What do I do about it without really causing things to blow up? And that's something I really learned in the fellowship. And I think I look at those open discussion meetings where there's not a speaker or there's not even speaker meetings. I think a speaker meeting is definitely an extension of the fellowship.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I agree, like all that stuff. And like I said, you can bring these things either to a meeting, because sometimes that happens, depending on how your meeting goes. We bring up topics. We had a topic a couple of weeks ago at our Friday night meeting about loss, losing someone close to you, and how you deal with that, right? And people may say, oh, that's not about alcohol. Well, it is about alcohol, because if you only have a couple of years sobriety, maybe, and you lose someone close to you, in the past, it probably would have been a good reason to go out and get wasted, right? And to drink and cover up all those feelings. So it is about that. I'll tell a quick story here, and this is what we're talking about. It was like years ago, I had a sister who has since passed with, I've told the story before, passed with lung cancer. And I was very involved with taking care of her and all. And she didn't have a good living situation at home, and so she had to go for surgery and have 2 lobes of her lungs removed, and offered to have her come up to our house with my wife to sort of spend a few days as she, worked through the first couple days, tough days of being home, and we would take care of her. My wife was retired. My wife is a nurse. My wife was not gung-ho with this. She agreed to do it, but wasn't really big on it. And we brought my sister up here. We got her tucked in, and she spent one night, and whatever. And the next morning she woke up and she said, I'm going to go home. And I thought she'd left something at home. I'm like, I'll go pick something up for you. She's like, no, I don't want to stay here. I'm going to go home. And I was furious. I was hurt. Like we had done a lot of work, my wife and I, to open our house to her. And literally, I picked her up on a Monday, and that was Tuesday morning. And I went out to a meeting Tuesday night. And because I knew there would be some guy. This is it. I knew there would be some people there that I would know. One guy in particular. And I went there and I vented. Oh, how this ungrateful bitch. How could she? Like I was like bent. And this guy just looked at me. It's our buddy Edson, who I talk about a lot. And he just calmly listened to me vent and like be all upset. And he said, what are you going to do tomorrow? And I said, what do you mean what I'm going to do tomorrow? He goes, I tell you what you're going to do tomorrow. He said, you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to call your sister, and you're going to see if there's anything you can do to help her. And I'm like, oh, screw you. I'm not picking up the blah, blah. And I was like, no way. And as I drove home that night from that meeting, I realized that he was right. Yeah. And that's what I needed to do. And the next morning I picked up the phone. I checked in with her. Hey, how you doing? Can I do anything for you? Which of course she said no at that point. But you know something? That huge hurt and resentment that I had was pretty much gone. Not completely gone, but the bulk of it was gone because I had these connections. I had this fellowship. I had this relationship that I had, created with this other alcoholic who, as I described, right, when I went back to this meeting, was a guy who sounded a lot like me.
Right.
And had 20 years sobriety. So he's one of the guys I attached myself to. Again, you stick with winners. I looked at this guy and went, wow, his brain works just like my brain, and he hasn't picked up a drink in 20 years. Maybe I can do that too.
Yep.
And he became one of my go-to guys when I struggle, right? When I'm really struggling with something, he's one of the guys I picked up because I say it all the time. He's the guy who gives me the advice I need to hear. Mm-hmm. Even like that Tuesday night when I did not want to hear it, right? I did not want to hear what he had to tell me. But, and that's the fellowship. That's making those relationships. That's making yourself available, right? You can go to meetings and not have fellowship, right? You can go to meetings, sit in the back of meetings, never raise your hand, never talk to anybody. But that's the fellowship of actually creating some relationships within your recovery program so that you can lean on these people when you need to.
You're missing out if you don't make connections and you don't talk to people. And I say this as somebody who doesn't particularly like to reach out and talk to people. A lot of this is my own character defects of I don't like to talk to people because I'm afraid of getting rejected. I am sure that new people will not want to talk to me. So to prevent
Right.
me from feeling hurt, I won't reach out to you. You are missing out in recovery if you don't talk to other people and get to know them, even if they're people you would normally not want to mix with.
Right.
Because there's always something in everybody that you can connect with. And making those connections makes you realize that the thing that we have in common is our issue with alcohol and how our mind is warped, that either was warped by the alcohol, or more of what I think is we had a warped mind and alcohol became our symptom. And you talk to people and they may have different issues than you, but the commonality is how they're responding to that. I think about what you were saying with your sister, and it really wasn't about your sister, it was how you felt. It was the inside thing. Oh. And I know that Edson has had those moments. He's not 100% wise in his own life, although it may feel like that. That's the magic of you can be a maniac in your own life and you see somebody else being a maniac, and because you're not associated with it, you can see it.
Right.
And therefore give the advice. I'm good at that. I'm not always good at seeing it when it's me, so I need to reach out to somebody else.
No, that there's no question about it. And that's why you have sponsors, and that's why we talk about different stuff, right? That's why you have a sponsor. And again, as you get to a certain point, then you use a lot of people like sponsors. But that's why it's nice to have one person that you can call, because for the most part, right, they're not emotionally connected with the problem, right? So especially when it becomes wives, and trust me, I've talked about it and I've struggled. And if you're married, marriage is a lot of work. And so when I'm able to talk to somebody about that, just like you said, my wife's getting under my skin or whatever's going on, like they're not emotionally connected to it, right? They don't have all that stuff, so they're able to sort of look at it differently. And today I realized that. Before I didn't want to hear any of that type of advice, but today I do. One of the things you said about you, and I hear it a lot, our buddy Jimmy talks about how when he came into the program, he did not want to talk to people. He did not want to, have conversations with people. And one of the ways we get around that with, especially when you go to meetings, is taking some service work, right? Mm-hmm. I know in the past, we do it less today, but we used to have door greeters, right? You talk about how, at that Tuesday night meeting, when I went to find Edson that night, was a meeting that you went and you took a door greeting a position there so that you'd have to shake people's hands, right? Yep. Jim talks about when he was going to the Friday night meeting, he didn't want to talk to people. He took the raffle tickets. And instead of taking a raffle ticket and putting it at all the seats where people usually sit, he would make himself rip one off, hand it to the person, shake their hand and say, "Hi, how you doing?" Right? He would force himself to do some of those type of things. It takes work for some of us, right? I'm not like that, right? I'm an outgoing person. I talk to people. I don't have that problem. But for people who do, it takes work. And again, this fellowship will allow you to do some of that work in an environment that's a little bit safer, right? I mean, for the most part, AA meetings are very safe. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get a lot of criticism unless you're one of the old timers who, will say, "I want to fight you."
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, get away from me.
Right, those type of guys. You see that less and less today. There was a time 10 years ago, 20 years ago, those people were just sprinkled all over AA. There's less of them today. So it's a pretty safe place to go. Let your guard down and make yourself vulnerable and try to look for some help.
Those guys are damaging. I'm not. That's why I play those things of the old timers who were kind of nasty. They don't play well today. And I think there's a lot more of coaching people that is effective. My role at work for years and years was coaching people to be more effective. Now, not only do I do that, but I teach other people how to be even more effective coaches based on a certain way of coaching people. And this is another approach that you can take with the fellowship. I prefer to take the approach of asking a lot of questions of people. I did this with somebody who was brand new talking to them. And I don't remember what the issue was. They were kind of complaining about something, and they had the right answer for why something was going on, but they got there the wrong way. And they were learning the wrong lesson about being right. And so I just asked some questions, really open-ended questions, got them to talk, and then I could summarize at the end. You know, it sounds like this is what's really going on. Yeah, that's what it is. And I would prefer, both in business and talking to somebody in the fellowship, to ask some questions and get them to self-discover. I'm not the type of person who's going to yell at them or walk away from them with one thing and make you think about it. I'm going to actually spend a little bit of time with you and ask you a bunch of questions and empathize and listen and try not to give you the answer and get you to that place you should be. It works with my kids. Generally, it works talking to people, and other people feel heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that's the best way to manage it. You know, I mean, listen, everybody has their different ways to do it, but that's the best way. You know, it's the old teach a man to fish. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right? It's the same thing. If you help people do self-discovery, then you know, they can learn from that. Listen, my whole program today is about learning, right? I'll be 67 years old this year, and I just want to keep learning about how I present a better person to the public, to the people I encounter every day, right? And I'm far from that. I've talked about my frustrations on this podcast. I've talked about some of the stuff I'm going through with my wife. When I'm really, really stressed out, and when I think people aren't doing their jobs, I can get really ugly really fast. And I still have trouble pulling myself back from that. Like, I'll know, like, ooh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I just keep going and going and going until the point where, right, I have to make amends. I have to reach out to people, and I have to say, and that's happened to me in the last, you know, since I've been dealing with some health issues with my wife. I've laid into a couple people who I thought didn't do a great job helping us, and I let them know. And in a later conversation, I was able to say to him, listen, you know, I'm sorry, but, and most of them are like, no, I get it. You know, I get it. It's the healthcare system we live in and all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I work on today, right? I work on not being a jerk, even when I'm upset. That, to me, that's still hard. But, and I get all that feedback, and that's what happens, you know. This is why I love the guys we hang out with, right? It's where Edson and Timmy and John, like, these are the guys who I hang out with, and I go, man, these guys are doing a great job with their recovery. You know, they're doing a great job. They talk about how grateful they are. They talk about how they owe everything to the recovery, and I do too, right? I do too. I owe what I have to my recovery, because if I wasn't sober, I wouldn't have any of this. I wouldn't be married to my wife, right? I wouldn't be living in my house. None of those things would be possible for me. So, and I get that feedback from people, just like you said. Sometimes they'll give it to me straight if they think I need it, and give it to me, you know, hard, and give it to me without any love. But a lot of times they'll just give it to me, just like you said. They'll walk me to it and let me figure it out for myself.
Yeah, I'm not one of those guys who can really put it between people's eyes.
Yeah.
It's just not, I don't like it, because I'm also afraid I'm going to piss people off.
Right.
And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that goes against your grain.
There's a better way of doing it, and nobody has perfect recovery. I think that's part of seeing the fellowship, is even when somebody that you look at as having perfect recovery is struggling,
right,
that you can jump in there. And having fellowship with people with less recovery is very helpful for that, of seeing a greener perspective that you might be missing.
Yeah, it's something you said is really important there, right? Nobody has perfect recovery. Right. Even those people that we look up to, right? Especially if you're new, you look up to these people and you hear them in meetings. Nobody has it. And I said this a few weeks ago at my Wednesday meeting because, again, I've been struggling with a lot of stuff in the last 2 or 3 months. And my Wednesday meeting is a great meeting that I found, a noon meeting. And I said, you look around, everybody sees me, and I'm new to that meeting. And I immediately came in, I made myself part of that meeting, and people like me, and everybody says, oh, I love when you share. Like, they always say nice things. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Steve's a nice guy, right? You guys see Steve for an hour a week, right? At a meeting, at my best, you see Steve. Like, but you don't know what Steve looks like when he walks out this door. Right. And that's my point, is like, they're looking at me like, oh, look at Steve. He's got good recovery. He comes, he shares. They know I don't have perfect recovery because I share my stuff. But my point is, it's easy to go and look at somebody and think, oh, they have this all figured out. And the truth is, none of us have it all figured out. No. Some of us work a better program than others, no question about it. And but nobody has it all figured out. And that's very, very important to remember.
Yeah, fellowship can be service too. When you see somebody not having really good recovery over and over again, that maybe I can be somebody to help guide them the right way. And that service commitment I did, where it was greeting people, that was from Jim. I learned that because he had shared something about, I don't like to talk to people. So I did this and it helped me get to know people. And that's why I did a bunch of service commitments, which were giving out raffle tickets, being the door greeter, because it would help me break the ice. And it was not easy to do, but I wanted to do something to make sure that my recovery was a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's important. Listen, we own our own recovery. We talk about it all the time, and we own our recovery. One of the other things you talk about service, the other thing is, there was one guy missing from our Joe and Charlie for our meeting. He hasn't been around for a bit, and the other part of service is, like, I reached out to this person, and I just want to let this person know. And what I reached out was, like, we haven't seen him around in meetings or anything, and I just said, hey, just want to check in. People have been asking you about you. Let me know what's going on. And my point, and I always put this when I don't know, I'm like, there's no judgment here, right? Like, no matter what, if I don't care if you're out using or you're out, if you've relapsed, like, my point is, there's no judgment. So feel free to reach out to me like, yeah, I'm out, and I'm like, we're here, man. Like, I'll always be here, willing to help somebody. So that type of service too, of checking in on somebody who you haven't seen maybe, I'm trying to do a better job with that. And what got me to do that was somebody from my Wednesday meeting reached out to me and said, hey, do you have this person's phone number? I haven't seen them in a while, and I want to reach out and let them know I'm thinking about them and check in, right? And I'm like, I'm not doing enough of that, right? That's what I mean. Like, I'm not doing enough of that. Reaching out to people who I don't see anymore, thinking, hey, just want to tell you, I'm thinking about you. I hope you're okay.
I don't do that at all.
Right. So I'm going to try to work on that and get that better and do a little bit of service work and let people know, like, hey, I'm still here. Reach out to me. And I say it all the time. I have no judgment on people who relapse and slip, and there is none. I mean, but the disease that we struggle with is a insidious disease. I've watched it kill people, right? I've watched it literally kill people. So I don't have any judgment. It happens. I get it. It's hard. You have to be very dedicated for most of us, at least the people that I know, you have to be dedicated to your program to keep it at bay. And I think it's hard for some people. I get it. It's hard. And some people think, oh yeah, I'm sober now. I haven't had a drink in 6 months. I feel better. And all of a sudden, boom, something comes up, and next thing you know, they're in the wind.
Yeah, I would want somebody to do that for me if I'm struggling. And I want to know, what's the fellowship mean to you? I'd love for you to email me at soberfriendspod.com, or you can reach out on Instagram, on TikTok, Blue Sky, all those places that you can reach us. We love to hear from you and your story, and would love to share it on the air, because your story, well, maybe we can help you. Maybe your story helps us and you can help somebody else in the audience. Steve, thanks for doing another great show with us this week.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be with you.
We'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.